Hello, teachers and staff. My name is Dave Thielen. If we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, I'm one of the instructional technology specialists here in Valley View School District. And today, we're going to walk through together what our new smartboards look like in our classrooms, the ins and outs of them, everything that you need to know to hit the ground running and be successful in this upcoming school year. Before we really jump into this video, I wanted to highlight the fact that we've created a Google site specific to supporting with the Smartboard MX series. It can be found if you go to vvsd.org/edtech, and then on the sidebar, go to Pre-K-5 Curriculum Supports and Smartboard MX Series. It's also linked in the Google Classroom in this online training. From here, you'll be able to see all sorts of different guides and quick tutorial videos and getting set up and equipped for the school year, such as using your document camera or something of that nature. So be sure to take advantage of this site as you're going through the training and beyond. Now, the very first thing that I'd like to talk to you with these boards is in relation to the buttons that are on the side. Mine looks a tiny bit different from what yours will look like just simply because you have the newest version. The only thing that is different is my home button is currently off to the right side of the board, and your home button will be dead center right in between the two markers. It does the same exact thing. No matter where you are or what you're doing, if you press the home button, it's going to take you back to your home screen. That button is super important. There's also a home button on your remote. Now, in addition to that, there is the input button. That will be in the same spot for you. When you press the input button, it's going to take you to all the different options where you can connect something, right? This would be where if you're plugging in your laptop, you would plug it into the same exact slots that you would with your old smartboard, that HDMI port and the USB port, right? We plug those two in. It's going to pull up on HDMI 1 and say that there's interactivity. You don't need to do anything additional if you're using your laptop. There are other HDMI slots as well as the VGA and USB-C slots if you have something else that you're plugging in. Now I want to move on to the next button. That is my shade. That's more of a freeze frame type thing if you have your laptop connected and you don't want students to see what it is that you're doing. Similarly, we have a pause button as well that will pause anything that's happening on your screen as well as a YouTube video or music. So that could be a great way of kind of stopping what's happening without having to go over to your laptop and press pause. We've got our two volume buttons. And finally, we have a little power button. This does not actually turn the board off. This sets things to sleep mode. So what that means is now this board is in sleep mode, but as soon as I press that power button back, it immediately turns back on. The actual power switch is hiding in the back of the board. You should not ever have to use that unless there is some fluke where your board is completely frozen or something of that nature. Then you can go around back, press the power switch, and then flick it back on. Now, before we do anything with our board, it's important that we talk a little bit about our smart learning accounts. In Valley View School District, you're going to have the opportunity to have a Smart Learning Premium account. What that means is you'll have access to all sorts of resources, not just to Smart Notebook as you always have, but also to Lumio, which is Smart's online platform that has tons of resources and all sorts of cool goodies that you can use with this board, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I first want to make sure that we're all set up and have our account. I've already gone through and added all email accounts that were set up with our district this school year. So all you have to do, if you haven't already, is go into lum.io. That is the web link that you need to type in and sign in with your Valley View School District email. From there, you should be set to go, and you should see a little icon that pops up as soon as you create your account that says you have premium access. If you, for some reason, do not, and you used your Valley View account, please reach out to myself, and I will get you that access. No worries at all there. Okay, now that we've all gotten access to our Smart Learning account, we can then go through and sign in with our board using that same exact Smart Learning account that you already did. So at the very top left corner, we're going to click on the little profile button, and right below on the bottom, it's going to say sign in. The reason for this is it's signing into your board. It allows you to save every single thing that you do, similar to Google Drive, directly to your Lumio platform. So think about smart accounts just like you would with Google. Everything is then saved to that platform, and it's really not even associated with your board. You could sign in with your profile to another board, and all the things that you created or designed that are in that account come with you. So it's really important that you sign in using that same exact account that you created just a minute ago with that Lumio account. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in, and then we'll jump right back into it. Now, once you've signed in with your board, it will take a minute and may go to a black screen or hop to a white screen or something of that nature. But then what's going to happen is all of your settings are going to appear on your board, and it will be as if you never left, even if someone else was signed into your board previously. So for example, you can see that there is a recent activity on here, even though I just signed into this board. And we'll get into this later, but if I go into my files, it's going to show every single thing that I've ever done with my account, tracking all the way back to July of 2022. Now that we're signed in with our board, you should notice in the top left-hand corner, it's going to show your profile rather than just a blank one, and it's going to show your name as well, whatever you decided to give your name for your smart profile. So mine says Mr. Thielen, yours may say your first name or something of that nature, whatever you decide, and you can always change that back in your smart profile if you want to. So now that I'm signed in, there's a few settings that are really important that we want to change to make our lives very simple when using this board. And the reason why technology or myself wasn't able to do this beforehand is because these settings can only be changed after you sign in with your profile. So I'm going to go into the settings icon in the bottom left-hand corner. And most of these settings you will never have to touch. But if you wanted to, for example, personalize your wallpaper, this is where you can find that too to change out your background. So maybe I want something a little bit fancier, right? But one thing that we are going to want to change out is in the security tab. In security, there is an option that says enable automatic login, right? So what I want to do is I want to turn that on. And the reason for turning this on is so that way I do not have to sign in with my profile every single time that this board goes into sleep mode. If I press that power button right now and then turn it back on, I'm going to have to sign back in with my profile, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to enable automatic login. From there, I should be set to go, and I should never have to re-sign into my profile unless I have a co-teacher or a specialist or someone coming in that's signing into the board as well. Now, one other important thing to double check and to shift if it needs to be is I've gone into my files library that's underneath application settings. There's two things I want to double check here. One is in file storage, allow Google Drive integration in files library. I definitely want to make sure I have that on. This is going to make things seamless for anything that I have in Google Drive to immediately pull up with my board. I don't have to have my laptop connected at all. We'll get to that a little bit later. But the other thing I really want to double check is where it says default whiteboard location. It says files and it says Lumio. That's what I want. When you first sign into your board, it may give you a little pop-up window at well that says, hey, do you want to use Lumio as your primary way of storing your files? Make sure you hit yes. But if you miss it or it doesn't pop up, here's where you can double check. It says my files to Lumio or my files to board files. We don't want board files. That means it's saving these directly to the board anytime I create a new file instead of saving it to my Lumio account. That's going to add more storage to this board than is needed. And if you were to go to another board or to sign in somewhere else, you're not going to have any of your files. So you want to make sure that it is set to Lumio. And then you're going to be good to go. That's the only settings we need to change. Now at this point, I'm sure you've heard me say at least one time where you don't have to have your laptop connected at all. And I'm probably going to say that a lot throughout this presentation because that's one of the huge highlights of this board is that it has its own built-in internet browser. That means your laptop could literally be shut off for the entire day and you can run anything and everything from this board. Now, in order to do that, we have our own set internet browser from the board. And just like with your laptop, it's going to save any tabs or anything that I open up throughout the course of the day unless I close them out. So when I go into my internet browser, right now, all that is set there is Spotify because that's the last thing that I was signed in at. But if I was to go in, let's say, and go into my Google Drive, or just, let's say I'm going to go to Google Docs, just as an example, and I swing into here, when I press the home button, it's going to pull me back home, but those two tabs that I had open are still saved. And if I go back into the browser, they're still going to be there. I can even bookmark things just like I would normally with my laptop and pull them up for easy access later. If I'm going to something like my Google Slides for the week for morning meeting that students are going to see every day or something like that, easy access can be done with the board just like it could with the laptop. Now, as you probably noticed, I tossed in a few friends down at the bottom of my home screen, and I will show you how to do that at a later time. But what I did was I added in Google Classroom and Google Drive as kind of favorites on my home screen. So the second I press Google Drive, it's going to pull up my internet browser, open up a new tab, and pull me straight to my drive. Now, I did sign in with my Google Drive the first time I did this. You only have to sign in one time, just like with your laptop. And until you press sign out, it's going to stay that way for you. So now this has given me easy access to access my drive whenever I need to. And again, if I press the home screen and I go back into my internet browser, it's going to pull me up to those same tabs that I was already in. Now, just for fun, I've pulled up a set of Google Slides, as you probably will throughout the course of your school year and presenting things to students. But remember, right now this is all being run from the Smartboard. My laptop is on the table with the camera that is recording me. Nothing's plugged in. And yet, I can still use this pen just as I would on the old board with the laptop being connected. It's immediately going to register that I'm writing rather than swiping with my finger. And there's nothing special about this pen either. This stylus is not unique. So you notice I'm writing in red right now, but I can change it out to orange or any other colors that are set for me on the side with my pen settings. There's nothing special about these pens like the others where they had a battery and it was all sorts of craziness. Instead, now all it is a magnet that sticks to the front of the board, and it's weighted to make things nice to hold in your hands. But you could use any other stylus that you have, and it's still going to register that that is the pen feature versus the finger or the eraser. And in case you didn't notice, the eraser, it doesn't exist. That's because it's actually also your hand. If you use your fist or your full palm, you'll be able to erase completely what is on your screen, and that's going to be able to tell a difference between that and just swiping your finger to move to the next slide, for example, or backwards. I think I was at the end of the presentation, so that's why it didn't move me forwards. So now you know a little bit about the pen features and what can be used, and just a reminder that these pens can be used to write on top of anything that is going on when your Smartboard is active. It doesn't just have to be in Google Slides. And just a friendly thought, if you're ever in a presentation and you have no idea how to get out of it, you can swipe from the top down, and it's going to pull me out of that presentation and back into my web browser. And here's the presentation that I was just in, now not in full presentation mode, but I can still write on top of anything regardless of where I'm at. And if you have a lot of things written for whatever reason on your board, if it's just from the web browser, you have to erase it before moving on. So if you're on a slide and you want to move to the next one, you have to erase what's there, or you could take a screenshot of it and save it for later. And I'll show you how to do that as well. You could erase it by hand or by palm, right? Or in the very top, there's an X. If I press it, it's going to give me a couple options. I can save this entire screenshot, and it will go into a section of my files that I can pull up later, almost like an anchor chart. Or I can just press discard, and that's going to get rid of all the things on my slide, and I can move forward. Now, just to get you a little bit more excited and give you some other ideas, again, this is an internet browser just like it would be on your laptop. So you could have YouTube videos or whatever you want running or set up for the school day in your internet browser, and they'll run exactly as they did before. And these speakers are already integrated in the bottom. There's no additional things to turn on, and they are of way better quality. So for right now, let's say I want to pause this, talk to my class. Remember, it's going to pause the video as well, and then I can just press it again to resume. And if you're ever in a full screen video, very similar to its slides, I can just swipe down and it should pull me out of the main screen, and then I have all my options to pause the video and so on. Now that you know a little bit more about your internet browser, I thought this would be a good time to talk about how you can get your home screen to show access to other apps that are already built within the board, but they're just hiding. At the very bottom, we have Files, Apps, Input, and Screen Share. Screen Share is one that we won't talk about too much today, but it does give you the ability to kind of screen mirror another laptop wirelessly. But I don't believe that that's necessary because we have a board that's going to have its own browser and do everything itself. But if you want to learn more about that, we'll have trainings in the future for you to do so. Input we've already talked about. That is the same button that is on the side. Files we'll talk about in just a moment, but let's talk about apps. When I press apps, it's going to pull me up to all the applications that are currently on my board available to me. You will notice that Netflix and Spotify have been pushed to every single board because those were two things that were requested during the course of our pilot, so I have it set to push those apps out to all boards. If you are interested in other apps being pushed to your board, you can make that request, but I can't guarantee that they will be able to be pushed. Some things, for example, like one of the other streaming apps was not able to be pushed just simply because it did not have the correct formatting. So you can always make those requests or reach out if you have ideas of how you can better enhance learning for your students, but these are the two that we're starting with. However, how did I get Google Classroom and Google Drive, or are there other Google tools that I could add? If I go into featured content, that was an app that was on that screen, it's going to show a bunch of apps that Smart already has integrated within this board. And if I scroll all the way over to the right, we're going to see Microsoft and Google. And this is where I added Google Classroom and Google Drive. Let's say I want to add in, for whatever reason, I want to add in Dropbox as a quick go-to on my home screen. I'm going to press the plus button, but I'm not done just yet. All that did was add it to my main board apps section. Now, if I want to pin it to my home screen, I need to press the star button right in the top left corner of the app. So if I pin Dropbox, now when I go back into my home screen, you will see it right here. And if I press and hold, I can also move these around and reorganize them however I choose, just so you're aware as well. So press and hold, similar to if you have an iPhone.
Using your district's provided document camera, you'll be able to plug directly into the Smartboard. From there, you press the apps on your Smartboard, go to the camera app, and it should automatically recognize the document camera. So now you no longer need your laptop connected at all.
Now that we've talked a little bit more about apps, I want to talk to you about the Files button as well. When I press Files, it should pull you up right away to your Lumio files. It says up at the top. If I press this drop-down box, whoops, that's a folder that I have. If I press this drop-down box in my files, it has Lumio, board files, downloads, and Google Drive. If you press the Google Drive, it's just going to take you to your drive, because that's why we integrated that in the beginning. But I don't want to be saving to my board file. So if I go in there really should be nothing there, unless someone created a file before you signed in to the board. What I want to make sure of is all my Lumio files are intact. This is where you can go to any file that you created, any whiteboard file, which we'll talk about in just a moment. From here, I can select any file that has been created underneath my profile since I started it back in July of 2022. You'll also notice, though, that I can star these as well. So if I have a reoccurring slideshow, maybe I'll star that one. And then when I go back, you can see that it's in my favorites tab. And at any point in time, I can also press and hold these and get rid of them from my favorites. That did not delete the file. It just got rid of it from my favorites section. Now I want to talk to you about my favorite application that's on the board, and that is the whiteboard application. This is slightly different from Smart Notebook that is on your laptop, and that will remain. That won't change. You can still use that exactly how you did with your old Smartboard. However, this whiteboard application integrates with that, but it also offers some new features that are very exciting that I want to show you about. Now, what I've gone ahead and done is I just pressed whiteboard on my home screen, and it automatically created a new whiteboard file. This does sometimes take a few seconds to load up the page initially, because what it's doing is it's almost like I'm creating a new file in my Google Drive. And then it's set to auto save. Anything I do with this file is going to be saved in my Lumio profile, and I'll be able to access it from my board or my laptop or another board at any time, as long as I'm signed in to that device with my Smart account. So you can see as soon as I create a fresh whiteboard, I have the option to change out the background, which can be very exciting if you want students to be working on something in stations, such as handwriting or something like that. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and just leave it as a blank canvas and walk you through some of the settings on this side. On the left, starting at the top, we have our pen button. This is going to allow us to change from regular pen, highlighter, and then the magic pen is basically where I'm writing on my board, and it's immediately changing it to text. So if you wanted something like that, you could use that as well. Now I'm going to go back to my regular pen option. There's also a bunch of different color options on here that aren't available if you're just writing in your internet browser. So the whiteboard does have a color wheel, so you could change out to any color that you want. There is one other really cool thing on here that I really want to highlight, especially for my primary teachers, and that is Touch Ink. If I turn on this option, what's going to allow me to do is I can now write with my finger as well as my pen. In fact, if I change out the color option with the pen, it's going to be different than the color option with my finger. So you could have multiple students writing on this board simultaneously at the same time with no issues whatsoever. In fact, They could be in different colors if you had one student being touch ink and the other being, oops, it still set to text, and the other being the pen. A few other things that I want to highlight with this whiteboard before we go any further is you may think that it looks like half of my canvas space is already taken up with this board, but there's more than meets the eye. Before I press the record button, I zoomed in. Whoops. This is a great way of pointing out the fact that if touch ink is on, which we just turned on with our pen feature, I can't do anything with my fingers other than draw. So as soon as I turn it off, I can then move things around regardless of whether I drew it in text or not, but I can also zoom out completely back to my original screen. This is what the canvas looked like in the beginning, and I zoomed into that one particular spot. So you can zoom in even further to a very specific piece of your whiteboard, so that way you're good to go. And I know it looks like a white canvas looks kind of boring in order to zoom in and zoom out, but we haven't even gotten to the fact that there's about 1,000 graphic organizers already preset up for you to use as well for all sorts of different content areas. Now, I did want to talk about a few other things. Let's say I have a bunch of stuff that's on my board. This next button here is kind of a highlighter tool. If I press and hold my finger and drag across, it's going to kind of group all of those things together. And with my arrow, I can duplicate, delete, convert it to text, infinite cloner, or even lock or ungroup it. What I usually do, though, is I'll just delete it out. It's an easy way to wipe out different things. Next is my widgets. Widgets are, some are unique to the whiteboard application, and others you can use no matter where you're at on this board, whether you're on your home screen, internet browser, wherever. The top four, dice, clock, spinner, and timer, are not unique to the whiteboard application. You can use them anywhere. So anywhere on this board, I can go into my widgets, pull up a timer, and if I press off to the side a little bit, I have a drop-down arrow, and I can even change up the settings of this to where, whether it's counting down or counting up, for example, what the size is, the sound alerts, or if there is one, and also to change out the color of it. So now I'm good to go. I'm going to press back on that, and I can press play and count it down, and it's counting up for me. I can also drag this anywhere I want and also resize it using the bottom corner. So that's just one example of one of the widgets that I could use. Again, there are some that are unique to this, this whiteboard feature, and that's the protractor ruler. More of the math tools are there. And you can also see at the bottom, I've actually made some custom widgets as well. So I'll show you very quickly how to make one of those, and then we'll move on. I know this is an introductory video, but I want to give you the highlights of all the components of this board. Now, just to give you an example of setting up your own widget, I'm using the dice as an option, and I can change out quite a few things. I can change out the number of dice that there are to quite a few, and then I can also decide whether it's a traditional die or it's text. So from there, I can also change out what the text is, and I can even have multiple letters. So I can even have full words on the die as long as they're smaller and they can be read. So it looks like up to about 7 or 8 can fit on a single side of the die when it's spinning. So I'm going to leave that one the way it is just to give you an example. And then I can also change out the color if I want to be fancy. But for now, oops, there we go. For now, let's back out of here. And what we're going to do is take a look at what it looks like when our die are spinning. So you can see this one up top, where all of them actually have that one really fancy one, and there it is. Friendly reminder that you can move these anywhere and enlarge the size if it's too difficult to read, or vice versa. Now that I have this die good to go, let's say I want to save it, and this is one that I'm going to be using often. If I press a little bit off to the side, it's going to kind of blur it out. There's my arrow, and I can press plus my widgets. I already did that, so it already has it saved. When I go into my widgets option, you'll see that there's a new die. If I want to change the name of that so that way I remember what it is, at the bottom I can press edit list, and I can change out the name to, I'm just going to, for now, do test. And then when I press off of it or press done editing, there's the die, and as soon as I press it, it's going to pull up a new set of what I just had. Now remember, that can be done with any widget that you want. You could have custom timer set or anything like that. Really, the possibilities are endless there. Now moving on to my next button, I have add content. I can add this from the web or the board. If I add it from the board, that would be something that I've saved directly to the board, such as a screenshot or something like that, or I can search the web, and this is all a filtered system, so it's you don't have to worry about whatever is being searched here. So if I search balloon, it's going to pull up a bunch of images or videos. Do want to be careful about the videos. You may want to pre-watch those because those are most likely coming directly from YouTube. But the images are filtered, so I can choose to add this happy birthday image in. It's even going to put it into the background. And again, I can reshape, resize that as well, and even create that to be an infinite cloner. If I'm doing something with numbers, maybe I have all the numbers set out as infinite cloners or something like that. And again, this can also be done from your Smart Notebook too, as I'm sure you're aware. The last button in this section is just the undo or redo button, so I can go all the way back to where I was actually editing my text off to the side. If I want to delete out my widgets though, I usually would have to go through and delete them one by one, or I can also highlight them. Oh, looks like I can't. Look at it, I learned something new today. So if I press off to the side, I can get rid of those as well. So now you may think, is that it? Is that all that there is with the whiteboard? But as we kind of looked at before, if I press this plus button down at the bottom, it pulls up a whole plethora of options for graphic organizers, manipulatives, exit tickets, and external files that you may have on your board. Graphic organizers is one of my favorites. There are tons of options for all different subject areas. Let's say I wanted to add in a 3-column option. There it is. I can add the titles and go. Maybe a KWL chart or something like that, and I'll be set and ready to roll. And remember, everything that I'm doing on this file is being saved to Lumio, so I'll have access to it tomorrow or next week or whenever I want to come back to it with my students. If I go into the manipulatives option, just to give you an idea of that, we've got algebra tiles, calendar, different clock options. I love the making words ones though, so I'll pull up that one just as a quick idea. So all of these are infinite cloners, and I can pull out the different letters to make different words, just as an example of a primary activity or station that could be done with this board. If I go back in, one other thing that I wanted to just show you really quick is exit tickets. We'll talk more about how this board can connect to our student devices and then back to the board again a little bit later. But these are available to you as well. And finally, external files. It will pull us up to our files folder. Right now, there are none in there. And remember, at any point in time, I can write using my whiteboard, and that is different from actually manipulating or moving. In fact, I can do them at the same time. And finally, down at the bottom, I've got my arrows to move up and down between the slides that I've created. And also, if I press on the slide itself, it will give me all of them kind of in a list mode, similar to Google Slides. If I press the 3 dots on any of the files, I can choose to change the background, change the page size, or delete out the page. We'll talk more about page size a little bit later, but just so you know, that option is available. This is where you can change the background like we talked about in the very beginning. Now I'm back on my home screen, and as you can see, there is a file that is new here in my recent section. It has a little B icon. That means it's a Lumio file. That's a good thing. That means that this file that we just made, that we were playing around with, is now saved to my Lumio account, and I can literally go into it with my laptop right now, or with another board if I chose to. You can also see that it gave it a title or a name for the file. All that it does is it looks at the date and the time that the file was created, and that's the name that it gives it. If you ever want to change that from your board, all I have to do is go into my files. I can't do it from that main screen because that's just the recent section. But if I go into my files and go to today, if I press and hold, I can choose to rename that file just by pressing into it. So if I want to give this a different name, let's say test, and I can just press enter and then be done. This is also where I can delete files, but if I delete them from here, remember, they're being deleted everywhere. That'd be like deleting a file in Google Drive on your laptop. Well, if you go home to your desktop, it's not going to be there either, right? So as soon as I'm good there, now we can see if I go back to my home screen, the most recent file is now changed to the name test. Your file names can also be changed from your laptop and your Lumio account as well. Now, one other feature that I wanted to highlight in video 1 is actually a brand new feature that just came out in an update this past month, and it is the split screen feature. It allows you to have 2 different applications open and running at the same exact time. So the button in order to run that is your recents button. It is right below your profile. It's a box with 2 lines. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull up all the different recent applications that you had running. For example, my notebook, my settings, and then my Google Drive, right? So what I want to do is I'm going to press this first icon, this Google profile, this Chromium browser, and I can press split screen. And what that's going to do then is going to give me a bunch of options like, okay, which other thing do you want to split it with? These are all the other applications that I had running. For now, I'm just going to use Notebook. So now I have 2 separate applications that are running at the same time. And please know, because this update is brand new, there may be a few different kinks with this particular split screen update. But in theory, I should also be able to move and adjust the size of both of these. If I go into slideshow with this one, for example, I think I just zoomed in on accident. It should be able to pull up my slides on one side and I'm working on the other. And again, I can always adjust the size of it or even make it virtually invisible and also slide it to where it is the only thing that is then running on the board. So that is just an inside scoop to the split screen feature. Imagine having a video running on one side and being able to take notes on the other at the same time. That is available with the split screen feature. And now what I'd like to do is I want to kind of shift gears into what things would look like if you were connected with your laptop. Because remember, we've been doing all of this without our laptop being touched. That could be in the back at stations, it could be taking attendance, it could be shut off or forgotten for the day, and it doesn't matter. This board is going to do everything for you, just as your laptop would.
So you're going to connect to this smartboard using your laptop the same way that you connected with your old smartboard. You would use an HDMI and then also a USB slot. You would use 2 cords to connect. One of them is for the picture and the audio, and the other is for the touch sensitivity of the board. So once you have those 2 components connected, then you'll be good to go to change the input out.
All right, I've gone ahead and connected my laptop using the HDMI cord and USB cord as I mentioned earlier. So even though you don't see anything right now, my laptop is connected. You may notice a pop-up as soon as you connect it saying, hey, we noticed something in HDMI 1 slot. Do you want to switch to that input? But I missed that because I was setting up to record this video. So that's okay. I can still just go to my input button here or off to the side with the buttons on the right corner. When I go to input, it's going to show me a preview of what is currently connected. So you can see HDMI 1 is connected and that it's touch enabled because I'm plugged in with that USB slot. That means the markers will work and I'll be able to move things around with my finger just as I would be able to on my laptop screen itself. So as soon as I come in, you'll notice that it's now connected. If I use my finger, I should be able to drag around things on my desktop, for example. And if I use my markers, even on the desktop, it should right away notice, and you can see my little marker popped up on the side here, because Smart Ink immediately was activated. And if I press my pen, I have all the features that we'll walk through in just a minute here, but I can start drawing directly on my screen as soon as I get into my desktop. But the possibilities don't end there. I can write on just about anything. So now that I'm in an internet browser, let's say I'm walking students through how they're going to get into Clever for the first time, I can use my markers to display, let's say, what they're going to go into. I can also move this pen around, so if I'm writing on the other side and I want to put it over there, that's totally fine as well. I would still erase exactly the same as I would on my whiteboard. And I can also adjust, change this out to a highlighter, for example. We're going to go into Achieve today, boys and girls. That's also totally fine. If I wanted to change out the color, I can do that as well. Remember, you can use your finger and the marker at the same time on this, but obviously the marker is almost like a layer on top of the internet browser. So as I move, it's not like the marker is going to move with it. But over in the top left of the screen, so over here, I have my Clear Ink button. It's usually hiding off to the top right. If I don't wish to actually erase everything, I could go up here, press Clear Ink, or Capture Ink, or turn off Smart Ink completely. But if you do that, you'd have to go in and manually turn it on, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. I'm just gonna clear out the ink, but again, I could just erase as I normally would, and I can still write with 2 markers, even if I'm connected with my computer. Now, there are some tools in Smart Ink on your laptop that aren't around on the notebook that I wanted to highlight really quick. If I press on the little pen here, I can change this out even to have stamps, for example. So if I could add a stamp tool, for example, maybe a smiley face in there. Could add it as my favorite, and boom, there it is. So now, as soon as I press somewhere with my marker, it's going to add that stamp of approval there, and it's very easy to change it back to the pen functionality whenever I want. If I don't have a color that I like as my 4 options, I could choose a different specific color and it will add it into my options there as well. So now you can see yellow has been added. If I wish to add in a different color, I can also add in straight or dotted, different types of lines as well in this section. And finally, I can go into my favorites bar as well. So lots of different options that you can use here that weren't necessarily on the notebook end of things when you're using your computer connected to your board if you choose to. There's also some cool features in the toolbox, such as, for example, the classic flashlight, and I could even adjust how big the circle is. You can also have a magnifying glass, which is relatively similar, but you could also just zoom in on the screen at any point in time if you chose to. You could also have the classic shade and bring it up or down as you choose to. The X, of course, is way up here, but hopefully yours won't be mounted as high. You can also take a picture and all sorts of other cool things with the Smart Ink tool if your laptop is connected. Just wanted to highlight those few features for you. Now, one last thing to highlight with the laptop here before I hop into Smart Notebook is before, when I was showing you all the touch features with the laptop connected, I was on mirror displays. That means that what was on my laptop screen was the same exact thing that was on my Smartboard screen. They were mirrored, they were the same. But you can also be using extended displays and it will work exactly the same. You can see right now, my laptop is actually on a completely different page than the Smartboard. But even still, for example, the pen feature will still work exactly the same. And I'll be able to write no problem, even though on this side, nothing is happening, right? And I'll be able to adjust things just as I would before, move anything on my screen, and so on. So it's important to note that you can use this as an extended display and still have all the touch sensitivity, or you can mirror the display to where the same thing that's happening on your laptop is also happening on your computer. All right, now this is where things get interesting, but also really cool if your laptop is connected and you're using the notebook software, right? Probably a software that you are all very familiar with because you use Notebook to work with your previous Smartboard, and this was really the only way of having an actual whiteboard. Not like the new one where it has its own whiteboard application built in, right? Now, things get a little bit wonky, but also really, really cool, and it allows you to have all sorts of things happening, not only writing on your Smartboard, but also writing on your laptop at the same time, all of them being saved to this one notebook file. So here's what I mean by that. Right now, my pen option is set to blue. If I change that with my finger to, let's say, purple, notice how the blue ink didn't change here. That's because I have two things going. I can write with my finger on this board, and I can also write with my finger on my laptop screen, and it's still going to show up because it's a touch screen feature, right? So I just wrote it directly on my laptop. But I can still erase everything with my hand, no problem. If I want to change the color of the pen, I have to use the pen to change the color, and then notice that the color of the pen changed. So now I'm writing in yellow with the pen, but my touch feature is still set to purple. So this can be a great way for students to be able to identify which one they're writing with. And just like before, I still have the touch ink set up to where I can use as many students as I want up here writing at the same time, and it's not going to change out anything. Now I want to show you one last thing. I have this file, let's say I set this up for my students, but I don't want my laptop connected the whole time. Let's pretend I set up this lesson, it's exactly how I want it, and now I just want it to appear on my notebook without having to have my laptop connected. Can I do that? The answer is yes. Let's take a look. I'm going to show you how I can actually take this file or any file that I've already pre-made, something that's made for my math lessons or something that I found online through Smart Exchange, and I want to set this file to where it's going to be directly uploaded into my Smart account, and I could literally just open it from my Smartboard without ever having to be connected to my laptop. So what I need to make sure of is if I go to the Account tab, that I'm actually signed in with the same profile that I was signed in on with my Smartboard. I'm already signed in with that, but just to double check, I'm going to click on Profile,
and you're going to see the same exact profile come up. Here's my icon, right? Here's my name. This can also be where you change your name if you choose to. So I'm signed in. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Share. When I press Share, it's going to ask me if I wish to upload this to my Smart account. Now, before I do that, I'm actually going to save this file so that way I can rename it. So I'm going to do test 3, just so that way I know exactly what it is. So now when I upload it, it will actually have that name. But I'm going to go to Share, and I'm going to press Upload to Smart Account. And then from there, that is all that I have to do in order to actually see this come up on my Smartboard. All right, now just in case you think I'm messing with you, less than 30 seconds ago, I uploaded that file into my Smart account. There is nothing plugged into this board right now, as you can see. If I go home and I go into my files, what is the first thing that comes up? Titled Test 3. Here's the board that I can manipulate and add to at any point in time, exactly as it was on the Smart Notebook app. Now you can see it's not perfect, right? I may have to zoom in to get it into the full screen since that resolution in this one is a little bit different. But this can be a great opportunity if you have any files that you already have that are Notebook, that are ready to roll. You can upload directly into here and then never have to have your laptop connected. And you can add to this whenever you choose to, and even adjust the things that were already there. All right, now that you have an idea of how this file system could potentially work with you, with your Smart account, the possibilities really are endless here. For any files that you've already made previously, you have an opportunity to either just plug in your laptop and still use those same exact files, or upload them directly to your board and never have to have your laptop connected ever, really, if you choose to. This could also be a great opportunity if you aren't feeling well and you know you might not be in the next day. You upload that file right to the board that evening, and it's there for the sub the next day, titled whatever you want to title it. All you have to do is in your plans, you say, go to Files, and click on X, Y, and Z, and bam, there's the file that you want them to go through. Maybe it's slides, maybe it's whatever, it doesn't matter. Or if it's something in your Google Drive, that can be pulled up right here too. Possibilities are really endless with that as well.
Now, just so you all are aware, on the Smart resource page as well, there's a few videos that highlight new things that with your board, I am not showing in my video because you all are getting the newest version of this Smart board, which is version 4. And the video I'm showing you today is using a board that is on version 3. There's 2 main overall changes to the board. And one of those is being able to use a Smart ID badge to be able to sign in rather than having to use your username and password. And then the other is using the Smartboard's built-in microphone, where version 3 did not have its own microphone. So if you're interested in learning more about those 2 components, I highly recommend checking out the resources page. I'll have it linked in the Google Classroom as well. But again, it's vvsd.org/edtech, and then find the Smartboard page in the Pre-K5 curriculum supports. Now that you've learned a little bit about how you can connect your laptop and essentially run this board just as you did before, if that makes you more comfortable, go for it, especially in the beginning of the year where you just want things to work, right? But I really encourage you to little by little add some components that are new and exciting that you want to take advantage of and see how they work in your classrooms. And if you run into any issues or hiccups, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or a technician in your building. We'll be happy to support you if you're having some issues. But for the most part, these boards are plug and play ready, and you shouldn't run into any major hiccups. Now, on that note, I want to shift gears and talk to you a little bit about what you're going to view in your next video. Video 2 talks about Lumio, the online platform that you created an account in. And what we're really going to be talking about there is how you can utilize Lumio to create interactive slides for your students in the moment with zero prep, and I mean literally zero, to where you can have your students interacting with their Chromebooks with what's happening on your slides. It sends that data to your board, and you can even view it in real time, similar to Pear Deck, and back to your students again in the blink of an eye, and really make things that much more interactive and exciting. And it doesn't matter what grade level you teach or what content level you're doing, this board is really going to redefine what learning can look like with the use of Lumio. So I wanted to get you a little bit excited about what you're going to be doing in your next video. But for right now, take a moment, decompress, soak in the information that you've learned today, but share 3 highlights of this board that you're just looking forward to using this school year. And then I'll see you in video 2.